Imagine if Hitler had won World War II. How different would our world be today? And what would everyday life be like if Hitler had won? It might sound like a science fiction story, but this future was closer to becoming real than most people think. In the early 1940s, World War II was happening all over the world. Nazi Germany had taken over Poland and France and was bombing Britain. Hitler's army was also fighting deep inside the Soviet Union. At the same time, Japan was quickly taking over parts of Asia and the Pacific. The world was on edge. Millions of people were dying, and the fighting stretched across Europe, Asia and Africa. By 1941, Germany had taken over most of Europe, while Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, and Italy was fighting in North Africa. The Allies, which included the United States, the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union, were under intense pressure. It felt like the world was slipping into darkness. But things began to change. In 1942, the Soviet Union pushed back in the brutal Battle of Stalingrad, where Hitler's army suffered huge losses. In North Africa, the Allies stopped German and Italian forces, and in the Pacific, the United States defeated Japan in key battles like Midway, which seriously weakened Japan's naval power. Then in 1944, the Allied forces landed in Normandy and began freeing Western Europe from Nazi control. At the same time, Soviet forces started moving in from the east. By 1945, Germany was surrounded from all sides. Hitler took his own life in April, and just 1 month later in May 1945, Berlin was also captured. A few months later in August, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender. And that's how all the Axis powers were defeated and Germany lost World War II. But what if the Axis powers and Hitler had won World War II? If this had happened, the world would likely have been split into two massive empires. The Nazi Germany would have dominated all of Europe, North Africa and parts of the Middle East. At the same time, Imperial Japan, which was Germany's ally, would have controlled most of Asia and the Pacific, including China, Southeast Asia and maybe even parts of Australia. Britain could have been taken over, with Nazi flags flying in London. France, Poland and the Netherlands might have been fully controlled by the Nazis. The US, on the other hand, could have been isolated, weakened, or even ruled by leaders who supported the Nazis. Now let's talk about what life might have been like after Hitler's victory. Daily life would have been completely different. Nazi ideology would have shaped everything, from what you could read, watch and say to what job you could have or where you could live. There would be no free press, no open elections, no internet as we know it. The news would only show what the government allowed. Books by religious authors, black writers or political opponents would be banned or burned. Schools would teach Nazi ideology and history would have been rewritten to glorify Hitler. And worst of all, the Holocaust might never have stopped. Similarly, if we talk about economy, then there would be no free market and entrepreneurship. In Nazi Germany, the government controlled most of major industries. Private companies were only allowed to operate if they followed Nazi goals. Many factories were forced to shift their focus entirely to war production, especially after 1939. So under Hitler's rule, factories wouldn't be making phones, cars or clothes for everyday people. Most would have been focused on building weapons, tanks and tools for war and surveillance. Big tech companies like Google or Apple wouldn't exist because the government would have tightly controlled all technology, using it only for power and not for innovation or consumer benefit. One of the most scariest parts of this alternate future would be the complete loss of diversity, as there would be no more different cultures, religions or traditions. The Nazis believed in the idea of a master race, and under their rule, many communities could have been wiped out completely. Religions like Judaism, Islam and even some forms of Christianity would be banned or attacked. Cities that were once full of different cultures and voices might all look and sound the same, quiet, controlled and lifeless. Even the way people spoke could change. German might become the main language in many parts of Europe and even the Americas. Music, food, clothing and art that didn't match Nazi beliefs would be banned or destroyed. Science might have advanced, but without any concern for ethics. The Nazis were known for doing terrible experiments on people without caring if it was right or wrong. If they had stayed in power, those cruel practices could have become normal. Medical research wouldn't have focused on helping people or curing diseases. Instead, it would have been used to control the population through forced sterilization and attempts to alter genes to fit the Nazi idea of a perfect person. This isn't just a guess. The Nazis actually did this during the war. They ran a program called Action T4, where they killed or sterilized thousands of people with disabilities. They also ran horrific medical experiments in concentration camps, trying to change eye color, test endurance to pain, or studying twins, all without permission. If Hitler had won, these cruel practices might have become a normal part of science. They probably wouldn't care much about space space or protecting the environment unless it helped them win wars. For example, they created the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range missile, not to explore space, but to bomb cities like London. It was designed by Werner von Braun, the same person who later helped the US build rockets for space. People would live in fear all the time under Nazi rule. The government would watch everything you do. Neighbours could spy on each other, and saying the wrong thing could get you arrested. And this isn't just a guess. Nazi Germany had a secret police force called the Gestapo, known for arresting people who even suspected of being against Hitler. In fact, many Germans were encouraged to report on friends, co-workers, or even family members. There were cases where children were told to report their own parents if they spoke badly about the Nazis. Public punishments and executions would be used to scare people into obedience. Everyone would need to act loyal, even if they are not, because one mistake could ruin your life. Now, is it really possible that all of this could have happened? The answer is yes. There were moments in the war when the Allies were losing. If Hitler had invaded Britain earlier, or if the US hadn't joined the war, or if Germany had taken Moscow, the history could have turned out very differently. If Hitler had won World War II, the world would have been colder, darker, and less free. Technology would only be used for control. Religion and culture could have been destroyed. Thinking about what could have happened helps us understand how close the world came to losing everything we now take for granted. Freedom of speech, democracy, science with ethics, and the right to simply exist, no matter your background, race, or beliefs. So the lesson is clear: freedom is fragile, peace is never guaranteed, and history can repeat itself if we stop paying attention. So while the world never saw Hitler win, we must never stop asking what would have happened if he did, because only by remembering the past can we protect the future. Today, once again, the world stands at a very dangerous crossroads. The ego of a few powerful people could push this world into the fire of war. And this is a fire that doesn't consume those wealthy elites. It only burns people like you and me. It feels like we humans have learned nothing from the past, and once again, we are heading toward a great war. And this time, that great war could mean the complete end of humanity. If you found this video meaningful, please share it and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next video with another important topic. Until then, take care of yourself.